Iran. I mean, a centerpiece of U.S. policy is to isolate Iran. Now, India is energy short, and the obvious way for them to get energy is with a pipeline from Iran, an Iran, Pakistan, India pipeline, because Iran is rich in energy. But the U.S. doesn't want that. It wants them not to get Iranian energy. Part of the way to talk them out of it was to give them support with developing nuclear energy, which meant freeing up nuclear weapons development. And actually the invasion of Afghanistan has to do with that too. I mean, in the background of the invasion of Afghanistan, this goes back 20 years, is the idea of setting up a pipeline from Turkmenistan, Central Asia, which is very rich in natural gas, one of the biggest in the world, a pipeline from there to India, which would run through Afghanistan. In fact, it would run through Kandahar, the place that they're now planning to attack. And that pipeline, if it could be established, would have two functions. For one thing, it would undermine efforts to establish Iran-India relations, and it would also undermine Russia's efforts to maintain control of its former, parts of what used to be the Soviet Union. That's a kind of a background consideration for the invasion of Afghanistan. Nobody knows just how significant it is. But in that context, it's understandable, can't approve of it, but it's understandable why the U.S. government, both Republicans and Democrats, would agree to support India's violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and develop nuclear weapons. As far as Israel is concerned, that goes back to the Nixon administration. The Nixon administration made a deal with Israel that, if you're interested in the details, the main book about it is by an Israeli analyst, Avner Cohen. It's in English. But what he reports is that, it's not on paper, but it's assumed that Nixon and Prime Minister Golda Meir just made a deal that the U.S. would permit Israel to maintain its policy of silence, not admitting that it has nuclear weapons and not denying it, and that the U.S. would not interfere with that. And Obama reiterated that after the International Atomic Energy Agency called on Israel to open up its facilities. So yeah, it's a client state. It's a valued U.S. ally. So if they want to have nuclear weapons, okay.
You started addressing the question, but you've been talking extensively about what international laws we've violated and how we violated them. But maybe what I would like you to elaborate a little bit on is why we violated them. And as a follow-up to that is, what concern to local populations / international law we should give in our quest to global domination and our accessing local natural resources?
Well, look, I suppose some unbelievably powerful country, from Mars, decided to take over U.S. agricultural and mineral resources because they wanted them. I suppose they were powerful enough to do it. What would we say they should do? Well, we know what we would say they should do. Okay, same when we carry out what's literally called protecting our resources. So you go back to top U.S. planners, George Kennan and the rest. They say we have to use force to protect our resources, which happen to be in other countries, but that's kind of like an accident of history. Clinton, for example, his official doctrine, which was worse than Bush's, but it was quiet, so nobody made a fuss about it. But the official doctrine was that the U.S. Maintains the right to use force to ensure our control over markets and resources elsewhere. Okay? That's our commitment. Should we do that? Should any other country do that? I mean, did we support Saddam Hussein when he invaded Kuwait? Why not? I mean, he was trying to take control of their resources, which he actually had a claim on. There's a serious Iraqi claim to Kuwait, which was sort of stolen from Iraq by the British to block Iraqi access to the sea when they established. But did we say, okay, that's fine, you can protect you can take your resources by invading Kuwait? I mean, we have a principle about this, and we apply it to everyone except ourselves or our clients. Okay, should we do that? Well, it depends whether you like to live in a criminal state, in a criminal society. As far as why we violate international law, the answer is pretty straightforward, because we can get away with it. There's nobody else in the world who's going to do anything about it. And as long as the American population is passive and obedient, nobody will do anything about it here. I mean, take, say, the World Court case that I mentioned. To repeat, the U.S. is the only country now, having lost the companionship of Albania and Libya, the only country that has violated a World Court decision. Take a careful look at that World Court decision. It's very illuminating. The court, Nicaragua brought a case to the World Court run by a very distinguished international lawyer, Harvard law professor. The World Court threw out most of the case, almost the entire case, and just drew a decision on very narrow grounds, a bilateral Nicaraguan-U.S. treaty. Why'd they throw out the case? Because the World Court's rules require that it cannot adjudicate a conflict unless both parties agree to the jurisdiction. Now, when the U.S. accepted World Court jurisdiction in 1946, it added a reservation saying that the U.S. is immune to any case that relies on international law, meaning anything involving the UN Charter or the Charter of the Organization of American States. The U.S. is immune to anything brought up under those conditions, meaning the U.S., this is 1946, when it was pretty much running the world, essentially said, look, we do not accept jurisdiction. We do not accept the application of international law to ourselves. And the World Court, accepted that. That's the way its rules work. And it even goes on. I mean, a couple of years ago, I forget, early 2000s, Yugoslavia brought a case to the World Court about the NATO bombing of Serbia. One of the charges in the indictment, the petition that they brought to the court, was on genocide. Well, the U.S. withdrew from the court proceedings on the valid grounds that when the U.S. signed the Genocide Convention after 40 years, it added a reservation saying it doesn't apply to us. So we're free to commit genocide. Well, we're free to commit genocide. We're free to violate the UN Charter or any other international treaty because we say so. And we can say so. First of all, practically nobody knows it. You have to be kind of like a specialist in the topic to know it. I mean, if we cared about our freedom, you'd teach this kind of thing in elementary school. But almost nobody knows it except a few specialists. And if it's brought up, it would be considered perfectly legitimate. I mean, take, say, the International Criminal Court. When the International Criminal Court was established a couple of years ago, it was not permitted to include the crime of aggression, the most serious crime of all, because the U.S. wouldn't tolerate that. We don't want charges of aggression to be floating around because we do too much of it. So that was knocked off. Then, even after that, the U.S. refused to accept the jurisdiction of the court. Now, the public wants to. I mean, the public is strongly in favor of accepting international jurisdiction, but elites are not. So the U.S. rejected the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. And in fact, a couple of years ago, Congress passed a law, which the President signed, which in Europe is sometimes called the Netherlands Invasion Act. The law authorizes the President of the United States to invade Holland if any American is brought to The Hague, to the International Court, to rescue them. I mean, can anybody else even say that? If you're a big enough bully and you have an obedient population, you can do what you like.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi. I was thinking, you talked earlier on that the USA and